House of EdTech, Episode 91.
Hi, this is Dennis Sheeran, author of Instant Relevance, blogger, speaker, and overall math guy, and you're listening to the House of EdTech podcast with Chris Nesi.
Support for this episode of House of EdTech comes from Domain.com. Do you have a teacher blog or a teacher website, and it's not a nice clean .com or .net domain name? Well, consider going to Domain.com for really inexpensive domains, as low as $9.99 for .coms and .nets, and take your blog or your teacher website to the next level. If you'd like to do that, go to chrisnesi.com/domains and add a great domain name to your website today. Welcome to the House of EdTech podcast. I am your host, Chris Nesi. The House of EdTech explores how technology is changing the way teachers teach and the impact that technology is having in education. I discuss technology that is changing our classrooms and schools, and I share tools and tips that you can hear today and use tomorrow. You're going to hear the stories of teachers, leaders, and creators just like you. The purpose? Whether you use it or not, technology is changing the way you teach and how your students learn. And welcome back inside the House of EdTech. I am so glad that you're joining me for episode 91. Summer is about to come to an end here in New Jersey. Going back to school is right around the corner. It's not the worst thing in the world, but we're recording the podcast and I'm looking forward to sharing everything that's going to be in this episode with you. We have the EdTech Thought, the EdTech Recommendation, and of course, the House of EdTech VIP. For today's thought, we're going to address the question, should you actually ask for forgiveness rather than permission? For the recommendation today, I have a great app for podcast sharing. And of course, the featured content in this episode is a conversation that I recently had with Nagel, and we're going to be sharing how he uses technology in his classroom when he's absent and still continues to support his students' learning. But first, a couple of news items, not related to the podcast, but some Google news. As we're getting back to school, depending on where you are in the country or as I'm getting ready to go back, Google has announced some new features for Classroom and Google Forms. In Google Classroom, you're going to now get a dedicated page to view each student in your Google Classroom. They've added decimal grading, so if you give decimals and you don't use whole numbers in your grading, there you go. You'll also now have the ability to transfer ownership of a Google Classroom to another teacher. And there are going to be some new integrations with Quizzes, EdSite, Kami, and eventually Code.org. And now teachers can sync Google Classroom classes from their student or management information system using IMS OneRoster CSV files or comma-separated files. That's probably more something for the back end, or if in your SIS for your district you have the ability to export student rosters, you can now import them into your Google Classroom. But I think the easiest thing is to just display, and actually that's another feature that I don't even have in my notes. You can now display your Google Classroom code on the projector screen real big and get all your kids into Google Classroom right at the same time. So I think that's just easier. Unless your school district is really managing and setting everything up for you, that's a feature that they could take advantage of. In Google Forms, you will soon be able to import grades from quizzes directly into Google Classroom, and you will also be able to add feedback to quizzes when grading. Now, I'm going to just say right here that I don't really understand the value of importing grades from Google Forms quizzes into Google Classroom because Google Classroom doesn't offer you a grade book. Now, I know you can export grades from Google Classroom, but then you're going to wind up copying or retyping the grades anyway into your grade book that you use. I'm just going to go on record and personally question the value of being able to import grades from quizzes into Classroom. I don't see the point because Google Classroom doesn't have a gradebook feature. And last time I checked, they're not going to be adding that. I mean, sure, things can change, but for at least the last 2 years, the people over at Google have said that it is not going to have a gradebook feature the way we would want it to have one. So, there you go. We kind of lose out on that. that's it for the news. If you're looking for more regular Google News updates and how to use Google in your instruction, then I recommend in a couple of weeks you get on board with the Google Teacher Tribe podcast. A friend of mine, and it's another show that I produce for Matt Miller and Casey Bell. Also, I should shout out Matt Miller for the release of his newest book along with Alice Keeler, Ditch That Homework. There'll be a link in the show notes if you haven't picked up a copy. But definitely get on board and subscribe to the Google Teacher Tribe podcast. It's a fantastic show, mostly because they're in it, and secondary and not as important, I produce it. So if you like the way I do it here and you're not listening to that show, head over to googleteachertribe.com and subscribe, and they will be back for the start of the school year. And if you haven't been listening, just go back and listen to their first 20 episodes. Great guests, great conversation. Matt and Casey do a fantastic job putting together their episodes. So shout out to them. That's all I got for here at the top of the show. Why don't we head over to, let's see, where should we go in this episode? I mean, we could do the EdTech thought right now. We could do the EdTech recommendation. I could go right into the featured content. Let's see. Eeny, meeny, miny. Oh, let's change it up. Let's go right over to the EdTech recommendation. For this episode, I'd like to recommend a podcast-related app. The app is called Echo, and Echo is a community of podcast listeners. Now, you know, just as well as I do, that listening to podcasts, for most of us, is a solo activity. It's you, your headphones, and the awesome world the podcast host has created. You didn't realize you're in an awesome world right now that I have created for you. Echo wants to add another member of that group, your friends. If you want a better sense of which podcasts your friends are listening to, what recommendations they have, and a convenient place to chat about these podcasts, Echo is for you. The key feature in Echo is to echo out a podcast recommendation to your community. This tells your followers what you have listened to and something that you've enjoyed, and that they should check it out as well. Echo is not meant to be a replacement for your podcast player, so whether you use the Apple Podcast app or Overcast or something else on Android, Echo has built it so no matter what podcast player you use or your friends use, you can always use Echo to showcase the best podcasts and episodes. Again, this is available for iOS and Android. You can find out more information about the app itself at echopodcasts.com. Now, this is new for me to try out. My iPad mini is the original iPad mini, so I can't install it there, but I will be installing it on my Android smartphone. So perhaps we can set up a community, you and I and other people who listen to the House of EdTech, and we can start to share out more information. I know I'm going to be bringing this app to AJ and Stacy, and we will probably talk more about it and how to use it over on Podcast PD. And by the way, if you're not subscribed to Podcast PD, go over to podcastpd.com/subscribe, and that's where Stacy, AJ, and I talk about professional development, and we give PD through the podcast, so that would be cool too. And I just kind of snuck in another recommendation. But anyway, go check out Echo, and hopefully, if I get it to work, and I should, why not, I will see you over on Echo, and we can start to share the podcast that I listen to and that you listen to, and we can continue to grow an awesome community here, starting with the House of EdTech podcast. And that's my EdTech recommendation. Now, while I was recording the EdTech recommendation, since that went first in this episode, I flipped a coin behind the scenes, and I am now going to give you my EdTech thought. And this episode's EdTech thought I'm calling Asking for Forgiveness Rather Than Permission. On a recent hashtag EdTech After Dark chat, one of the questions during the chat was, quote, "We are all doing our best to innovate our instruction for the betterment of our students. How do you deal with barriers that seem insurmountable?" Dan Koch, one of the founders and moderators of EdTech After Dark, responded with one tweet that said, quote, "Ask for forgiveness, not permission. If it's to benefit kids, it's correct." End quote. Now, nothing against Mr. Koch for using the quote and putting this sentiment out there. Not an attack in any way. But I really dislike this notion. Early in my teaching career, I might have had a different opinion, but as I get ready to enter my 10th year, as I finish a decade of excellence, I really dislike this notion. Asking for forgiveness rather than permission is stupid in education. Now, I don't really like to use the word stupid. It's strong. I was going to say that I hate it, but hate is even stronger. But I really, really don't like this notion because in education, you need permission. You might have the best intentions of what you want to do with your students, whether it's apps or a lesson or an activity or something that you want to do with them. And you know what? If the people who are in charge of you are not on board, you're in trouble. If you want to use, say, Remind 101 to communicate with your kids and you've done the research and you know how, it doesn't share phone numbers and you get all your kids on it, all it takes is one parent or another teacher to question what you're doing. And, you could be looking at some big problems, even if you had the best intentions and it was only to benefit the kids. So I sort of don't recommend that you do that. You might get lucky. Maybe you've got the personality, but you know what? It is always safer to A, ask for permission, and B, get that permission in writing. Even a casual conversation with a principal or supervisor might not hold water. But if you maybe do that, follow up with an email. Get in writing that it's okay. Yes, you can try something. Yes, I'm aware that you're doing this. So that way you've got that. I think more important than asking for permission and or forgiveness is CYA. Make sure you protect yourself as an educator, because you might not be forgiven if you haven't asked for permission. Ask for permission. Don't ever have to look for forgiveness in education. You don't want to be in that spot. And that's my EdTech thought. And as I said at the top of the show, and based on the title of this episode, I'm about to share with you my conversation with Nate Nagel, and we talked about how and what technology you can use when you are absent. And it was a great conversation. Thank you now to Nate for taking time, and of course I will thank him at the end of the episode. But it was a great conversation. So if you ever need to be absent, bookmark this episode and maybe put a little extra into how you support your students when you're not there. Because, as they say, kids deserve it. So, here is my conversation with Nate Nagel. Nate is a husband, father, and teacher who currently teaches middle school technology at the Montgomery County Public School System in Maryland. Since 2009, he has served as a teacher, tech coordinator, department chair, and mentor. Nate loves teaching students and teachers about technology and how to use educational technology to get the most out of their classroom experience. His bachelor's and master's are both in technology education and education technology, and they're both serving him quite well. His goals include creating engaging, unique, and fulfilling experiences for his students. He is passionate about creating video-based content, and we will be exploring that and more in this conversation. Nate, at long last, as a longtime listener and friend of the show, welcome to the House of EdTech.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Nessie. It is wonderful to be here today.
First of all, hold on. You're not in trouble. You can just call me Chris.
Oh, that's fine.
When we were setting up this conversation, we've kind of titled this episode, Harnessing the Power of Technology When You're Absent. Let us know, what are you doing if you're absent and you're still using technology?
The general gist is when you're absent, you have a substitute, you have to do the sub plans, and you know what you have planned never actually gets done the way you want it done. Either the sub didn't read the plans right, the kids took advantage of the sub. I'm a middle school teacher, so these are the things I have to think about. And it just doesn't work out the way you wanted it to. And I really wanted to find a better solution to what happens when I'm not there. Because I'm a tech ed teacher, a lot of what happens requires that I'm there. Like kids can't use tools if I'm not there. If we're using certain software, if I'm not there and they can't ask me what's going on with it, they might get stuck and might be done for the day because of that. And I just can't have that happen in my classroom, and it shouldn't happen for them. My absence should not affect their learning.
That's very considerate of you.
Well, it's also selfish of me, because if I'm there and I know what they should be able to get done and they get it done, it allows me to continue on with my plan instead of adapting my plans and kind of changing to fit what happened because I wasn't there and I didn't have things done properly. If I have a plan in place and it's followed the way I want, it makes my life easier. So it takes a little bit of prep work, but I'm really saving myself a lot more work on the back end.
Absolutely. And I've said for years, even to my wife, it takes more work for me to be absent than to actually go to school and teach. Because, again, I'm not there. I've got to prepare the lessons. I got to print out stuff or make sure that the resources are all available. And then you hope when you're not there that the kids do what they're supposed to do and they don't make somebody else's life miserable.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is, or can be, a nightmare. Now, my kids are usually pretty good and it's never really been a problem, but I don't want to run into a situation where it becomes a problem and I have to worry about that. I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to set up my lessons, to set up my day and my kids to be successful for when I'm not there.
Why don't you give us an example of, say you were going to be out tomorrow and it wasn't a Saturday or a Sunday. What might you have planned for your students to work on, or what would they have available to them?
Okay, so how this happens is if I'm not there, I'm still in the classroom. And that sounds weird, but I'm still engaged, active in the classroom, even when I'm not there. And I do that through video, either with my cell phone, my digital camera, whatever it may be. I can take a video of myself. I can set the expectations. And the nice part here is that the substitute can hear exactly what I'm saying. It knows my tone of voice, sees my face. So I can speak to the entire classroom. The entire classroom can know what's going on because I captured it on video. And we can go through and then I can give expectations. I can give exactly what we're doing for the day, how it's to be accomplished, what needs to happen when you're done or finish early, and what to do if you run into problems. I can do all of that in video format. And then I also provide a Google Doc that has the information in there as well. So I hit all those different learning styles and I minimize excuses for students of why they couldn't get something done.
The next question that popped in for me is, in doing this prep work for your students and creating the video or any, say, Google Docs that's going to give instructions or provide information and resources for the lesson, what do you provide and create for the substitute? What is, I'm Mr. Nessie, I'm coming in to sub for Mr. Nagel. What am I going to find?
Okay, so my substitutes love coming into my classroom. I'm not a bragger, but substitutes leave me notes that they love coming into my classroom. And the reason for that is because they get a one-page piece of information. Half of it is emergency drills and what to do for seating and all those type of things. So when you come in my classroom, if you're a sub for me, you'll see the seating chart, and then you'll see a single sheet of paper, one side, that will have the emergency information and then what the kids are supposed to be doing. The subs know through our subsystem, we can kind of give notes to the substitute about what to expect and what's going to be done. So they know coming into my classroom that the kids are going to be working in Google Classroom. All the instruction, all the expectations, everything will be handled through our Google Classroom, and that the kids just need to come in, sit down, get attendance, and then go to the computers. Now, this also takes a little bit of training on the part of me and the students so that they clearly know what to do when there's subs there, and that I have everything set up for them when the sub's there, so it's consistent every time.
Now, is Google Classroom, since you mentioned it, is that how you're pushing a video of you giving instructions if you're going to be out? Is that what you're using to push the video?
Yes, I'm using Google Classroom. I upload the videos either directly from my phone or I'll put them on my computer and edit them, and then I'll put them online. But I can put them right in there, and it's all self-contained. So I have the videos in order of what I want them to do, and I'll have the Google Docs, Sheets, whatever they're doing. It has all the links, resources, everything is in the Google Classroom. It's great because there's no question about what's supposed to be done, how it's supposed to be done, and parents know that if I'm not there, I'm still a resource. I'm still available for my students.
I was actually just going to lead into how you prepare the students for you not being there. So great transition. How do you prepare the students for this type of learning?
Yeah, so if I know I'm going to be out, generally I know when I'm going to be out. I don't get sick very much, and the only time I really miss school is either for a conference or if my son's sick. But if he gets sick, I generally know when he's going downhill, so I can kind of plan around that. I will tell my students, hey, I'm going to be out tomorrow. This is what you need to do. These are the expectations. If we don't follow the expectations, you're going to see a whole lot more of Mr. Nagel after school. And usually that little fear of God spiel is enough to make sure that they follow through. And most students, quite honestly, don't have teachers that will record videos and put them online so that they can see their faces even if they're not there. So there's a little bit more buy-in just in that sense that they want that to continue, because usually sub work equals a boring day for students. I don't want it to be a boring day. I want it to be a typical day in the classroom.
I'm guessing that you teach in a computer lab setting. What technology is available to your kids?
So my kids have some computers that are horribly outdated, but they have computers, speakers, and headphones. So there's a computer for every kid in the class, plus a few. I have headphones for all of my kids. I have speakers for all the kids. And that's really where we go with things. We're a Google Apps for Education, or whatever they're calling it now, school. So we have the full Google suite, so I can use Google Classroom to post all the assignments in, the videos in, and also as a place to have a discussion with my students if I'm not there.
Right. It sounds like you're trying to set up an opportunity where the learning doesn't stop and they can continue to move forward with whatever they might be doing or working on.
Exactly. The learning should not be dependent on me. The learning's dependent on them. I'm there as a guide. I'm there as a resource, but learning is really for the kids to do, not for me to do for them.
So Nate, what exactly are you using to create these videos? And obviously you mentioned Google Docs, but what's the technology behind your videos?
Okay, so I have two pieces of equipment. I have an iPhone. It's a 6S Plus. I know I'm behind the times, but the 7's not worth it in my opinion.
Behind the time.
I know. It's a year old. It's a year-old cell phone. I mean, it's ancient at this point.
That's like calling a 13-month-old baby a senior citizen.
Exactly. But in the world of technology, I mean, that's where we're at as a society. Is if it's not at least, under a year, it's old.
That's true, but that's a whole different episode.
Yeah, that's a discussion for another time. But I have my cell phone, or I have my DSLR. It's a T4i that I got used on Amazon for like $300, it's actually cheaper than my cell phone, and I can record video on there. I have an external microphone that plugs into both, because before we talk really about video quality, audio quality is paramount. If they can't hear you, if you're not clear, if it's muffled, or if the sound is distracting to them, they're not going to get the quality of education that they should. So I use a little, I think it's by a company called Rode, and it just plugs right into the cell phone or plugs right into the camera, and you get great quality audio because it's a shotgun microphone. So it's directional, it looks right at you, and it just picks up the sound of you talking right at it.
You're not going to find any debate with me that, yes, audio is very important.
Yeah, I'm on a podcast. Obviously, audio matters. But yeah, so I have, as far as video equipment, for capturing talking head video where I'm in front of the camera, that is my cell phone and it is my camera. 9 times out of 10, I use my cell phone, mainly because I don't have to get an SD card and plug it in their computer. I can just wirelessly transfer through AirDrop from my phone to my Mac and edit and do whatever I need to do right there.
Now, how much editing goes into these videos? How long would you make a video? What are we looking at here?
It really depends. The expectations video is a minute of me just laying down the law of be yourselves, don't try to be an idiot, just go through and do what you're supposed to do, because we really want to make sure that the actions that we do when I'm there are the same actions that happen when somebody else is there. Again, I'm in middle school, so this is something I really need to focus on, because middle school behavior can be a problem. So I really try to knock that down and kind of go through that. So the expectations one is only a minute or so. It's real quick, real fast, real easy. Then I'll go into what we're doing for the day and directions. Now that can be 2 or 3 minutes. I don't want to kill them with me talking. I want the main points out as quickly and succinctly as possible so that we can get on to the learning. Because nobody wants to sit there and watch my face talk on a screen for 5-10 minutes. That's just not fun for anybody. So it's real quick, easy to do. And then I'll actually open up the assignments and make a video going through the assignment with them. And I use a software called Camtasia to record my screen. And I go through, record, I'll talk with my screen. It will capture my webcam. So I'll have a little webcam with me open in the bottom right-hand corner as I'm discussing what's going on or showing what needs to be done. So it's really a full kind of lesson in the normal sense. But my days usually, I only talk for about maybe 10 minutes a class period. When I'm normally there. And I try to cut that in half when I'm not there, just so that we can get to the work, get to the learning, and minimize distractions from ourselves.
Now, let me just go back for 1 second to the this expectation video. Is that something you would record before each time you might be absent, or is that something you record once and you'll reuse? I'm just thinking of workflow.
Right. I personally record it every time. I want the students to see that I care about them, that this isn't just some canned thing that they get every time, because the effect of it is greatly lessened if it's just they look at it and they're like, oh, I already saw this, and move on to the next thing. I will make a new one every time. That one I really don't edit at all. It's a conversation I have with them. I welcome them. I say, hey guys, you know what our core values are. Here we go. This is what we need to do. Please be respectful. And it's just kind of the normal stuff that you would expect out of your students. You just kind of get it out there. But I want it as a conversation. And I also just want to make sure that we're on the same level, that we are agreed that this is where we should be at as a class.
Oh, that makes sense. And again, it goes back to and demonstrates, you care about the kids. So, why would you give them something that's canned? Although in my head, I just thought, if you recorded a bunch in the summer, you could put on different shirts and ties. But I understand the actual genuineness you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that, and I'm moving to make my classroom more video-based, more digital in that sense. But I want to make sure I'm more at the same time with my kids. And it makes the production kind of timeline of things a little bit more tight. But if I am there with the kids and I can adjust on the fly, then I kind of know what I need to do, as opposed to recording a whole bunch of things weeks out and then showing them. If there's problems that crop up, I'm not as able to fix them as quickly as what I would if I can do it on the fly.
You just mentioned that, maybe not doing stuff that's weeks out. But what is the earliest you've recorded the actual nitty-gritty of the day video versus, what's the latest you've ever put in the time and effort to record one of these videos?
Okay, so the earliest out I've ever done one was I had the flu, so I knew I'd be out for a little while. And in all honesty, when I felt good enough to record, that's when I recorded. So I think about 3 days ahead of where I thought I would be out, I recorded the video. Just in case. So 3 days was my max. And as far as my minimum time, I've done it the same morning that students were coming. Now, this happened because I didn't have a class first period. So I had that time from when I get up in the morning at about 6 o'clock or so to when my students actually come at 9:15. So I had a good 3 hours to get something done, planned, and ready to go for them.
Whether it's time out or very close, maybe the same morning, on average, what type of time are you spending editing once you've shot it? Okay,
so I don't do a ton of editing unless it's something that requires I go through and really look at something. Like in one of my classes, we build and race maglev trains. And for them to be able to get the magnets set up properly, the poles aligned properly, it takes some explanation and takes some visuals. So I brought the equipment home, I knew it'd be out, and I really went in and edited it. The video was about maybe 3 or 4 minutes long, and the edit time total from when I took the video to uploading it to the classroom was probably about a half hour. So essentially like a 10x multiple of actual playtime to recording and editing time.
That's not too bad. And again, it's not like you have to be James Cameron and you're producing, Avatar.
No, one of the things I'm really trying to do is greatly improve my production quality. The flipping classroom idea has been around for a long time, and it used to be acceptable to just record yourself talking on slides and kind of move forward from there. But we're reaching a point where quality is really starting to matter. These kids are looking at YouTubers who, shoot in 4K and make amazing stories every day. And I need to start trying to be able to emulate some of that, to be able to capture their interest and to keep them going on the path that I need them to go down.
All right, you brought it up. What would you be looking to do that would do that? What is something you'd like to emulate in your videos that you're not currently doing or not able to do?
What I really want to do is I really love to spend the time to take and go and tell a story. I think a lot of education is based on task management and going through one thing to the next, as opposed to showing the story of why these things happen, how they interact with each other. There's some YouTubers like Casey Neistat and a bunch of others that tell amazing stories in like 10 minutes and just make life look really interesting and fun. And if I can emulate that for school, I make school look really fun and interesting, and that's really what I want to do.
I like it. So, Nate, when you were talking about including content in your videos, you mentioned Camtasia as a way to record screencasts where, you were also part of it. Not everybody has access to Camtasia. Are there any alternatives to that teachers can use to record their screens?
Oh, there's a lot of really great alternatives, and it ranges from more expensive to completely free. There's a giant range of them. So I use Camtasia, which runs about $100. It works on Mac, PC. There's ScreenFlow, which also runs about $100, and that works on just Mac. So those are kind of in their own little category, and those are screen recorders and editors. So they're full-featured, mostly editors as well, which is nice. If you're on a Mac, you could use QuickTime. QuickTime has a full screen recorder built in automatically for free. So if you have Macs, you have a screen recorder built into your system to begin with, which is awesome. If you're running a Windows 10 machine, you also have a screen recorder built in for free. It's under the games area. It's made for people who want to record games and stream them to the internet, but it can be used to record your screen and to send it right down to your computer for later work. As far as if you're on Chromebooks or you want to just use something browser-based, Screencastify is a great tool. It has a little watermark if you don't pay, I think it's $15 or $12 a year. But that when you do pay that money, it does come with an editor as well. You can download stuff. And one I use at school because I can't get anything else to work with it because of how it's locked down is a little plugin called Screencastify. It plugs into your Google Drive. It's completely free. It has a little watermark. You can pay, I think it's $15 a year to remove the watermark, but it's really not a big one, so it doesn't matter. And it will export the movie, that recording that you did, right into your Google Drive, which means it's available for your classroom immediately, which is awesome.
Very cool. Great recommendations that will all appear in the show notes for this episode. So thank you for sharing those.
No problem.
What is the reaction from your colleagues that this is something you do when you're out? Is there other people who have said, hey, Nate, can you show me how to do this? Or have you gotten any pushback from your colleagues?
I've never gotten pushback from anybody. I'm being the tech ed teacher. I'm also the techie in the building. So they kind of just know that if there's something happening, it's probably me doing it. So I haven't got any pushback. I have gotten a few people who are interested, but nobody who's really jumped full on yet. I get I want to learn how to do that. You need to teach me sometime, but we haven't had that time to connect yet. I'm hoping during pre-service next year, when we start off the new school year, that I'll have a chance to work with the people who really want to look at this and kind of work with them on how to set it up and do it.
I can definitely relate to offering stuff to colleagues, and sometime never seems to arrive.
Yeah, it's frustrating, but it's also understandable. There's so much on your plate, and adding one more tool to your tool belt might not seem like the most important thing at the time. It might be a great tool for you, or it might not be something that you really jump on board with, but you'll never really know if you don't give it the chance.
That's true. And speaking of giving it a chance and jumping on board, for as many years as you've been doing this, what has been the reaction from your students in terms of, do they like it? Do they not like it? Obviously, they would love you to be there all the time. But what have some of the feedback been from your kids?
They, by and large, really take to it. They really like that the content's there, that it's accessible, and that if they're absent as well, that there's a video recording of what we were doing that day available for them. I'm trying to record more each day so that I can get the entire lesson or entire whatever we're talking about onto the internet for them so they can access our content, our class, and me at any single point. The biggest thing that they seem to like is not only the video content, which they like just seeing that I'm a teacher who puts in the work for that, but what they really like is that if I'm not there, Google Classroom, you can have comments. So they can leave a comment and it buzzes on my phone, even if I'm deathly sick on my bed at home, if I get that buzz, I'll look at it and I will respond to it. It's really, really useful for conferences.
Oh, definitely. And again, if you're not there, you can still be there if absolutely necessary, if a student has a question. So that's great.
Yeah, and again, I just don't want my absence to be the reason for a lack of learning happening that day. And anything I can do to minimize that, I'm going to do.
Now, in talking about this for the most part for the majority of this conversation, everything sounds really great and really positive, but you and I both know, as well as the listener, there have to be some obstacles and challenges that go along with this. Can you share some insight into that?
Absolutely. The biggest problem is having the kids watch the video in detail. If we're going over a step-by-step process, if I go over it too fast or I gloss over something that I don't think or don't plan on being a big problem or a stumbling block, and it winds up being that, I have to have a way to react to that and go through. So it's really a matter of trying to really plan out where it's going to go and what's going to happen, where your failure points are going to be, because you're going to miss a lot of them, especially when you're first starting out. So it's really important that you go through and meticulously figure out where my kids are going to have problems, where I can go in and support them, or where I need to slow down, or where I need to provide more information, or the things that we really look at and we provide a ton of detail on, but don't really take that long. Trying to kind of work around and see those. And the first couple times through, it takes a little while to figure out what exactly is going on with those.
Is there anything in your curriculum that you would not present to your students if you were out, that you would make a video and come up with something as an alternative, or it doesn't matter what it is, you feel confident that you can make a video and your kids can get through the content?
For the vast majority of content, I can make a video and they'll be able to get through it. For project-based stuff, which is the majority of my class, but projects where we're using tools, like we just got done doing a project where they use box cutters to cut through foam board. That will not ever happen if I'm not in the room. Tools are completely 100% off limits if I'm not there. I'm the only one in the building certified to allow them to use them. A substitute is not there to do that, and the risk to the school, to myself, to the students is not going to happen. So tools and anything that involves tools, I have to find alternatives for that day because I can't have a safety risk happening if I'm not there.
Can you give an example of, say you were at that point where you'd have them using these tools? How do you make that adjustment if you're not going to be there?
Okay, so the last project we worked on, I'm just going to go into what's in my mind most recently. The last project we worked on was a housing design project. So the kids designed the floor plans, they designed it to meet all the different codes in the county, and then they built it out of foam board. If we are at the point where they're building it in foam board, and that's where we're at in the project, I'll have them go through and maybe jump to other parts of the project, or find a piece that could fit in as part of that project. So, for instance, if we were building the foam board houses and we're at the point where everybody's cutting, part of that project later down the road is to build a realtor website to try to sell the house to other teachers in the school. I send out a big list of all of the links to the houses to try to sell. If they're working on the cutting part and we're building the website later down the road, I can have them jump immediately into the website and push the pause button on the house because the house will still be there and the website is not affected by the ability of the house to not be totally complete yet.
That makes sense. That's a good tech workaround.
Yeah, it's really just a matter of if I have pieces of my assignment that can be done out of order or out of order according to how I have it set in the rubric or whatever, then I can have them move forward and go through. Occasionally that doesn't work out. If there's a situation where I just don't have something, I will find something relevant. I'll have them search news stories. I'll have them find information. I'll have them generate ideas that they can bring back to the class and present to show that we did something, we've learned something on the topic that we're working on.
Very cool. Nate, what advice would you give to a teacher who is listening to this, who is curious about trying this? Why should they try it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really nice. It's just an easy way for you and the students to get learning to happen. It's just a really easy way to do that. And as your slogan says, technology is not hard, just give it a try. That's all this is. It's just giving the chance to go through to create a video and to put it on there. A lot of people are really weirded out when they're in front of a camera because for some reason that soulless piece of plastic looking at you is a lot scarier than the 30 eyeballs looking at you. It's not any scarier. It's just that it's in a different setting, and being able to embrace that setting, because education is very heavily moving towards video-based content and learning at your own pace, that this is something that you really want to add to your tool belt as a teacher.
All right, Nate, we've spent the better part of insert X number of minutes here because once I edit it, I have no idea how long it's going to be. It's not going to be any longer than we talk because I can't put words in your mouth.
Oh, you could. You could edit it to be fun.
Oh, you know what? Maybe that's an idea for episode 100 where I talk to people who I've never talked to. I'll figure that out. But anyway, so for those who are listening who are like, all right, I'm into this. I have more questions. Obviously, they could come to me, but I would then point them to you. So let's just cut out the middleman. How can my listeners get in touch with you and learn more about incorporating technology when they are absent?
Sure thing. The best way is Twitter. It's at Mr. Nagel. The Mr. and N kind of join together to look like Nagel, but it's Mr. Nagel. And also, you could visit my website, nathannagel.com. I post a whole bunch of stuff on there, and I'm always putting new things out.
Thank you so much, Nathan. I really appreciate it.
No problem, Chris. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you again to Nate for taking time to be here on the podcast. I hope you definitely check out the show notes at chrisnessy.com/91 so you can check out all the links to the resources again that Nate and I discussed. And it really doesn't sound that hard to shoot some video. You know, again, you're not making Avatar, which is always my reference to a big-time Hollywood production. But these videos don't have to be big-time Hollywood productions. It just needs to get the point across and be viewable to your students. So definitely consider taking advantage of some of these resources and technologies, and even just the idea of how you can support your students if for some reason you're not going to be in school on a particular day or for any extended period of time, short or small. Let's get on to our last segment, and that, of course, is the House of EdTech VIP. And this episode's VIP is, drumroll. Nope, I don't have the drum roll sound effect going today. But congratulations to Eric Kurtz. Eric is an authorized Google education trainer and a Google certified innovator, and he has had the privilege of providing thousands of hours of training and consulting for schools and organizations all across Ohio and around the country for more than 20 years. He works hard to provide professional development and services that are engaging, informative, practical, and accessible for all participants. Kurt is a fan of the podcast. I'm happy to be connected with him on Twitter. He's got a great blog. He is a very avid blogger, and his content is definitely worth checking out and reading. You can check out his blog at controlaltachieve.com. I will also include a link to his YouTube channel, and that again will be at chrisnessy.com/91. And you need to connect with Eric on Twitter, of course. That's the whole point of this. So if you're not connected with Eric, his Twitter handle is Eric Kurtz, and that is ERICCURTS. And congratulations, Eric. You are a House of EdTech VIP. And thank you for checking out this episode of the House of EdTech podcast. Again, episode 91. We are 9 episodes away from 100. And I told Stacy and AJ this, but I recently called an audible as to what I'm going to be doing for episode 100. And I'm really, really excited to share episode 100 with you on, I don't even have to look. It's going to be, well, no, I have to look. Let me pull up the calendar here. Let's see. Episode 100 will be released on, I'm pretty sure it's December 3rd. Yeah, December 3rd. And then, of course, we'll finish the year with the House of EdTech Smackdown on December 17th, episode 101. But episode 100 will be December 3rd, and I'm super excited. But I'm going to stop rambling about episode 100. Thank you to Nate for for taking the time again to share your insight on using technology even when you're not in the room. Let's keep the conversation going for this episode. I would love to connect with you and hear your thoughts on the information and resources that Nate and I discussed, or if you try out Echo, let me know about it. Go to the show notes at chrisnessy.com/91, or you can send me a message by going to chrisnessy.com/feedback. Now, if you enjoy the House of EdTech, and if you get this far in an episode, I know you enjoy it. I'd like you to do two things. Number one, tell somebody else about the podcast. If you share it on social media, use the hashtag House of EdTech. Very simple and easy to do. Or you can also start to tag the show on Twitter. I do have a Twitter account set up for the show, and that is at House of EdTech. The second thing, you could also become an awesome supporter of the show. I'd like to thank Jen Giffen, Peggy George, Mark Grindell, Dan Gallagher, and Jeff Herb, and of course, Brent Warner for all of your support. If you are interested in becoming an awesome supporter of the show, just go to chrisnessy.com/awesome, and you can help keep the lights on for as little as $1 an episode. Not required. I'm going to do it anyway, but if you want to help out, I would certainly welcome your support. The next episode of the House of EdTech, number 92, is going to be released on August 20th, 2017. Now, I want to tell you what I'm going to do for that episode, but I am going to hold back and I am going to make it a bit of a surprise because I think it's also going to tie into something else I'm doing later in August, which will also be a surprise. So I'm being very cryptic here at the end, and there's a reason. But anyway, until next time, thank you for learning with me, and remember, using technology isn't difficult. Just give it a try. The House of EdTech is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. The Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. For more, go to edupodcastnetwork.com.